if people have a genuine courage and a genuine curiosity to find and stand in their truth, then they're ready to be in my world.
Yes.
If they're not, they're not, and that's okay.
Hey, you guys, and welcome back to The Psychic Within, where we talk all things spiritual, psychic, energetic, and healing. And I have a special guest with me here today that I just had the honor of hearing parts of his story. We've had brief conversations, and I think this is going to be a really powerful podcast. So I would like to introduce you guys to Brian Bogert. He is a force multiplier for human potential. Welcome, Brian.
You nailed it. The title my wife made up to make me sound really cool. You nailed it.
I was hoping to remember that.
Yeah.
So welcome. And I'd love for you to share a little bit before we dive in.
Yep.
Lots of questions. And I feel like just listening to you in the last session that you did, we share a lot of the same ideas and beliefs and practices, but I'd love for you to share a little bit of your backstory.
Yeah. So the story I guess I'm most well known for is that when I was 7, I was run over by a truck and my left arm was completely torn from my body.
Yeah.
And reattached, 24 surgeries, years of struggle and adversity. But obviously it shaped a whole lot of my beliefs and the way that I operated as well. One of the early elements of it is just this power of choice, because there was a nurse there that day that saved my life. And I said for years that I was forever indebted to her. And that was reinforced. I met her on the 30th anniversary of the accident for the first time.
Wow.
And I learned that there was another nurse there that day, a friend of hers that had the same set of training. Now, this woman literally came over and stopped the bleeding on the main wound and saved my life, and also got my arm on ice within minutes because she instructed some others. So my life and my limb are saved because of her, or I wouldn't be sitting here with you today. Her friend turned her head and went on with her day. Now, I want to be really clear when I say this. That was well within her right. I have no resentment, no frustration. There's no negative energy. Yeah. That was well within her choice. However, a lot of my life I live today because the power of a single choice can have a ripple effect through hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people.
Wow.
Right? Her choice saved my life and shifted a great deal of perspective. And there's a lot that I live my life based on today that's really rooted in the choices I make in every single moment, because the choices and the actions that follow are who define me. Yeah. And so there's a lot into my story and the dynamics that I'm sure we'll get into in the short time. But today, that's what I try to help other individuals do. I work with heart-centered impact makers at all different sizes and scales of companies and businesses to identify and remove the waste they don't know exists within, so they can kind of step fully into the wealth side of life.
And part of the stuff that you do is going deep within.
Always.
And looking at what has shaped us, what is holding us back, what we have a power to bring to the surface to change if we decide to. So I have a question for you. And this is something I feel really strongly about. I think because I'm a mom. We talked about this. I know that you're a dad. And one of the things that makes me cringe, and I feel like you can talk about this on two levels, of one being a parent, but also experiencing something so tragic. And basically you could have died from as a child. People often say children are strong and resilient. Do you believe, what's your take on that?
I think that children are stronger and more resilient than adults.
Okay.
By a long shot. I think kids are adaptable.
Okay.
I think that it's even in environments that are set up to destroy them, even if it's not intentional to do so. They survive, they adapt, they model, right?
Okay.
Now that doesn't mean that all of those components end up being healthy ways of living or healthy behaviors.
Right.
But like if I look at a kid's ability to heal, right? They can compress time into days for a simple wound that someone in their 50s or 60s may not heal as quickly, right? Their linguistic ability, their communication abilities, and there's such greater abilities for new neural pathways to be developed that I think that had this same injury happen to me at 30, I would be like every other story of an amputee. Right. In fact, I walked alongside a guy that was 30 years older than me who had his arm detached at the same time in a different accident. Yeah. And he lost his arm a year and a half later. Yeah. Right? Yet I don't have any memories of myself with my arm normal.
Really?
So when I watch home videos, it's weird for me to watch the recording of two traditional structured arms.
Right.
So, and I've witnessed it with my kids, right? Like, yes, I think they're crazy strong and resilient.
Right. And do you feel that that strength and resilience comes from an emotional level? Because one of the things that I heard you sit here and speak about was all of the things that you experienced as a child because of this, not even speaking about the other things that happen in life. And then as an adult, having to heal from all of these things that you took on. And that's where I look at is that, yes, I agree with you that our body heals faster, that we can maybe adjust. Neural pathways are created, but I don't actually believe children are as resilient as we say they are. They maybe adjust because of that, but I work with adults and all we do is heal the stuff that resilient children had to hold as children. But it has come into their adult life. And that's what we spend the majority of our time healing between 0 and 7, which is interesting that happened when you were 7.
So the emotional development happens typically between 7 and 14.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that's also why I said, though, that they are strong and resilient, but it doesn't mean that all of their patterns or survival methods are healthy and productive.
Yes. Agreed.
However, if you put those same kids and those same types of dynamics into environments that foster and teach what we in our generations were not given,
right,
you actually see all of it come together. And I'm witnessing that with my own children right now.
Yeah. Well, times are so different.
Completely.
Yeah.
And so I don't disagree with your point. Almost all of my work with people is identifying to the source or sources of these cellular reactive moments that are causing a set of beliefs emotionally, intellectually, physically.
Yeah.
We learn physically first, we experience physically first, but it also means that the other ones take longer to catch up, to process, and to have the tools.
Right.
However, it's possible. It's just that if we don't have the awareness and intentionality to shape it early, then you're right. What do? We adapt in bad patterns.
Yeah.
But that's no different than how a physical scar heals.
Correct.
Until we knew the benefit of sutures and how we could actually structure a wound to heal,
Yeah.
it would be like a barbaric wound that it looks nasty, but it healed.
Right.
So I would suggest that, yes, there's ripple effects to those components, but I actually would tell you there's a smaller percentage of adults who choose to do the difficult work.
Oh, I think
and
1%
yet
of the
every
population
child adapts.
Yeah.
And every child is resilient. And so it becomes a choice as an adult. And therefore, though it's harder work, they are choosing the path versus a child who's adapting to what was given to them.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely agree with that. And it's interesting you say that because I agree with you. I feel like 1 to 2% of the population actually does the really deep work. I think we just travel in the circles.
But yet every adult lives today, right? And they've all been through shit. So I think you're right. But it's the 1 to 2% that are the ones now who have the responsibility to bring others along with them.
Yeah.
And to ensure that our next generations don't have to unwind the shit that we put on them.
I know. Yeah. And I think it's such a powerful thing. And I know this is stuff that you work with people on. So one of the things that I love to talk about with people is their psychic abilities. And you might sit here and be like, I don't believe that I have psychic abilities. I believe every single person has psychic abilities, whether we call them intuition or psychic abilities. And I heard you say before that you do have a superpower. You want to share what your superpower is?
I have an ability to see and feel where people are in pain.
Okay.
I can very clearly sense where they are protecting themselves.
Yep.
And yet, because of the way I view people objectively and non-judgmentally, I also see their power and their potential through that.
Amazing.
And so, yes, I would call it psychic abilities, call it medium, call it intuitive,
energy.
call it empath, call it... I think that for the reasons I needed to adapt and survive, I learned to read people really, really well.
Yes.
And I had lots of reasons why I already had some natural gifts in doing so. The world taught me not to trust them, though.
Yeah.
Right. And yet the more I trust them, the more relevant and accurate they become. And also the less I care about being right, the more it happens.
Right.
Right. And so I think that there's a lot of this is there. But yes, I do believe that we all have an ability and that there are some things that can be trained. My biggest issue in scaling the work I do with individuals and how I compress the time to utilize my gifts is I can't teach somebody to do what I do and how I do it.
Interesting.
I can teach the framework. I can teach different elements of human connection. I can teach communication. I can teach persuasion. I can teach, but none of them will ever allow somebody to view somebody through my lens.
Correct. Agreed.
And so that's the other dynamic to this is it's like Where is it coming from? I don't know. I believe for me, it has to do with presence, because when I'm very present and when I am not worried in any way about what I'm going to say other than trusting that the truth surfaces, then it's as if wisdom flows through me versus me having to access knowledge or like go through a formula to tell you why I believe what I believe.
Right.
Does that make sense?
100%. Yeah. That's what I would call channeling.
Yeah.
Is that when you're channeling and connected and allowing that divine wisdom to flow through you, you're not in your brain. You don't pull from your logic. You don't pull from even your own past experiences. It literally flows through you.
Yep.
So, yeah.
And so, yeah. I think I do that often with people, and it's even been coined by people. Like, actually, it was coined by my wife, which is funny because right after I got into coaching and started actually like honing this about 10 years ago, she used to say to me very early on, "Don't you Brian Bogert me," and that actually like became a thing as well, because there's like people that are like, "Did Brian Bogert just do his thing on you?" And they're like, "Yeah." So I also couldn't talk about it like as if it was a gift though.
What?
Because there was shame associated.
Really?
Because who the fuck are you?
Right.
Who are you to think that you're able to read me?
Yeah.
But that was also because I was lacking security in myself, and I didn't have the ability always to facilitate the emotional safety required for me to be able to allow someone to trust and receive. So it's even little things tactically though, where it's like feedback is permission based. So like I rarely will give feedback to somebody unless I'm actively engaged in a conversation. And often then I even ask if I can give permission.
Interesting.
Right? Because why? It's just the energetic choice to lower the armor and actually be willing to receive. So you could say the same thing in two different ways. You ask that singular question and there's a higher ability for somebody to actually trust, especially if it resonates as they're receiving it.
Right. Yeah. And I love that. And I love the fact that you emphasize that this is your gift, that nobody can do this, and really leaning into that trust. It's what I teach. I teach people to do any psychic thing out there. And all of those things that you stated are things that people have to work through, but as well as working through that trauma.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm curious with you, have you found, one of my beliefs is that as I call myself a healer, and as a healer, and I believe that, I don't know if you call yourself a healer, but I believe you're a healer.
Yep. So, again, we could put all these names together and they're one and the same.
Exactly. Yeah. And one of the things that I have found is that we can't want somebody to heal or take that responsibility of somebody's healing on. So I'd love for you to share a little bit about like your process, or it doesn't even have to be the step-by-step process, but how you approach it and what you do and what you have found to have the success that you have.
There's so many layers to that question, as I know you know. I think the most simple is the ability to identify what energy is yours and what energy isn't yours. And being able to understand that first opens up a lot of other pathways, right? Yeah. Like, because then you get to choose what you want to do with someone else's energy. Yeah. And I'm a big believer that even when we choose, and sometimes we do choose to carry it for a while or to help be that bridge, and there's a reason why we're doing it, and hopefully we don't get bit on the other side of it. But I would suggest that most people who are genuine healers would do this for free and forever and for everyone, right? And so there is an element of that I think will always exist for all of us. And I think we wouldn't be human or healers if we didn't allow for a little bit of space there. Yeah. But there still has to be appropriate boundaries, and there still has to be accountability, buy-in, and energetic exchange on both sides. I'm blessed at this point that I've been doing this work long enough, and the extent and where it's gone, I'm not within most people's budget. Right. I am very okay with that because I also know the outcomes on the other side, and I understand what that translates to in business and monetary value and other pieces. All that said, though, I also believe very much in showing up the same way that I show up always. So if somebody's sitting in front of me and I think I can say something or do something that might fit within the realm of my gift that I might still get paid for, but I can add value to them in that moment, I'll still do that, even if it's not mine or my responsibility, right? You talked about the interview you watched right before. Yeah. I felt the need to share that. Yeah. It didn't feel like a permission-based comment because it was still a question. Yeah. And yet it was helpful for the person. Absolutely. Some would say that, right? And yet at the same time, because I can compress time so quickly and how I read people and communicate it back, there are others that may not place value on that. Right. And so it's all of these dynamics, both from a business standpoint, but more importantly, from an energetic standpoint. because there are people, and I say this always is the truth in my world. If people have a genuine courage and a genuine curiosity to find and stand in their truth, then they're ready to be in my world.
Yes.
If they're not, they're not, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But then there's a second layer to that, because people can have the courage and the curiosity to find and stand in their truth, but that doesn't mean that they're willing to do the work or keep it moving forward and growing.
Right.
And yet the ones in my world who have the biggest breakthroughs in the shortest amount of times are the ones that listen, process, absorb, study, reflect, and apply.
And a move, yeah.
Because if we are not moving, right, then we're by definition stuck. And so almost all of my work is about compressing time, not to get people to sit in the shit, but to be able to understand it, to understand the pathway to start to deprogram it. And yet everybody's in a different place in their trajectory there. And so it's always a real time, even intuitive feel to see where someone is and where they're ready. And also, when do I push someone or, almost hold them accountable in a really direct way versus I need to pick someone up and give them a hug and give them encouragement.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's the reality about people, is we're so dynamic and there's not a formula for doing this.
Right.
But I will tell you that the better I've gotten at early and often communicating expectations and boundaries, particularly when it's a formal engagement, the better.
Yeah.
But guess what? People are still human and they're still going to break them. And so we then have to be the ones to be able to be willing to enforce them. Because though I teach people to live in an unprotected state,
right,
it does not mean that you cannot or will not protect yourself or those you care about when you need to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
I totally agree. And I love that, because I think it's, as healers, we can say, I can help anybody. And I do believe that a lot of healers can, but I'm like you, I am priced incredibly high, expensive, because of the energetics, because of the transformation, because of what I ask of my clients when they step in. And so I love this. I love that the boundaries, the standards. I love the way that you hold yourself and the space that you give your clients to grow into, to grow. And I know one of the things that you do is also like help businesses.
Yeah.
So I'd love to hear some of the results that you get, because it's not just the healing. It's not just the speaking your truth. It's not just, the shedding, but it translates into more results in their business as well. I'd love for you to share that a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I could give you many examples.
Yeah.
I'll try to focus on two,
okay,
because I think they're tangible and they're probably relevant for other people. One of the stories is a woman who I've known for a few years. She's been on our mastermind now for a couple of years, and she is a very, very accomplished creative. She's been in a designated niche for 10 years, very highly sought after. She's negotiated multiple 7, 8, and 9-figure deals between suppliers and vendors. She, as a creator, averages between 5 and 7 million views per week.
Wow.
Gets about 200 to 300 DMs per week. She averages over 1 million followers on every platform, and all of them are organic. She gets crazy high engagement, very good at what she does, right? But for 10 years, she'd never made over 50 grand in her life.
Oh my gosh.
For 10 years. Because she undervalued herself. She
Yeah.
undervalued all of the opportunity and the relationships that are here. She didn't know how to step into it.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, in her very first mastermind session, we did a hot seat with her. And this was just the beginning of the work. So I want to be really clear. It didn't just happen in this moment, but we shined the light in the first moment.
Yeah.
Her deepest trauma is tied to her creative ability in a moment that happened when she was 12 and was reinforced over a whole variety of her life. And so yet she's still trying to do this. Within 9 months in our program, she did 250 grand. She's on track to do over $1 million this year.
That's awesome.
Right. And it's her understanding her value, her worth, how to negotiate and garner it in the marketplace, how to communicate about it, how to not seek, love, validation, and connection through performance, all the stuff that's hardwired. Because the reality of it is once you get clear also in yourself, you can be more clear and convicted in your message. And when you always live in a place where you're having to justify, defend, or protect your value, you're never going to get it.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Even though you exist in it. So that was one example.
That's such a great example, because on the outside, it probably looked like she was doing so well with all of those stats.
And
Amazing.
then there's an organization. It's a $50 million logistics company. It's a second generation owner. So Dad and brother were the founders. I'm working with the new CEO. He purchased the company himself. It wasn't like nepotism. It wasn't handed off. He literally bought the company because he wanted to do this. But at the same time, one of his deepest things is that he never actually lived his life for him. He made all of his decisions and choices to fulfill on the fact that his dad told him for the first time when he was 40 that he loved him.
Yeah.
And so there's lots of dynamics that face into this, but what does that also mean? He wouldn't even proudly position that he was the president and owner of this company because he believed that the impression would be that it was given to him. And it's like, well, that's not even a difficult shift. Like that's a communication dynamic.
Yeah.
But my point is all of these underpinnings. Well, so then it's deepened into a broader relationship. And just in the last 2 months, we sat down and in a half day, we redesigned the first 40% of his customer journey on a $10 million segment in his business that's been unprofitable for over a decade.
Wow.
They've literally lost money and they were convinced that they were a loss leader. However, when I did the analytics, they've never generated another dollar of revenue in their business from this component ever. Wow. So the question becomes, do we cut it or sell it, spin it off, optimize it? We redesigned the first 40% of his customer journey and flipped it from a negative 2% profit with as much waste as they could remove. And now they're making 8% on the profit on that revenue stream. Yeah. And at the same time, we crafted the whole communication architecture for him as the CEO to take over their largest client, which was an $8 million a year revenue client that was going to RFP. Wow. So they didn't know how to communicate it, step into this role, and they didn't know how to strategically get there to allow them to see that as the incumbent, you can't talk about what you're going to do. Right. You have to talk about what you are doing and what you've learned and where it goes. Well, they not only secured the RFP, but they picked up another division and they doubled the size of the account.
Amazing.
Right? So that's significant dollars.
That's huge.
And so that's what this can look like. And now we're getting ready to come in and we're doing strategic planning and leadership with all of his C-suite because he's had enough experience now that he wants to get me deeper ingrained in the organization. So I do work like that.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, it's all people work. It's all people work, all of it. I don't care what the business issue is. It is never strategy and tactics. They're critically important to leverage and scale our lives and businesses. Right. They're never the problem.
Yeah. And I absolutely love the fact that you're bringing this into businesses and corporations. It is, I truly believe it is the key that has been missing from truly successful and fulfilled people in
even
businesses.
More now with AI.
Yeah, agreed. Brian, this is such a great conversation. I feel like we could talk forever. I know we are out of time. I'd love for you to share with the audience where they can find you, follow you, learn more about you.
Yeah. If you're a web person, go to brianbogert.com. Not every single thing we do and offer is on there because, well, we keep our website as up to date as we possibly can, but it's not the primary focus. If you're social media, you're at Bogert Brian on any channels. We also have a podcast, Flipping the Lid. But at the end of the day, we want to impact 1 billion lives as quickly as we can by reducing the level of suffering on this planet. And that doesn't happen without all of your help. Move people. And so if you were moved at all by anything in this discussion, I just ask that you absorb it, you apply it, and you move it in your world because then others will be moved as well.
Thank you so much for being here. I loved everything you shared. I love the fact that you are using your superpowers as well as your life experience in order to help people. It's been amazing.
Thank you.
You guys, thank you for joining me on this episode of The Psychic Within. I hope this was helpful for you in the sense of really honoring who you are, what you're here to do, honoring your superpower, your psychic gifts, and really looking at your own work in order to be able to help others. Be sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you guys next time on The Psychic Within.